audience, so you were one of my favorite instructors as I came through Metro. So, yep.
One of my grads right
Yep.
there, so yeah.
Thanks, Laurie. So, putting you on the spot, what else, Laurie, do you have for me that you could ask?
Um, hmm.
Yep, we're struggling.
Yeah.
Welcome to Office Hours Podcast. My name is Art Brown. I currently serve as the Dean of Information Technology at MCC. Today, I'm happy to have our next guest, Laurie Olberding. Laurie is a current IT faculty member within the department here at MCC. Welcome, Laurie.
Nice to be here.
Thank you, thank you. So, Laurie, the series of guests, our faculty have been coming on talking about the various programs in which they lead or support. The first thing we'd like to hear from faculty is share a little bit about your professional background and educational experience that got you to MCC, if you don't mind.
All right. I graduated from UNL back in the, odd 80s, I guess it was, a long time ago.
Gotcha.
And I had a business education degree. And I moved to Dallas right away and ended up working at a real estate development firm, but teaching at night at a post-high school business school.
Okay.
It's actually owned by a couple that was from Iowa.
Oh, okay.
So it's kind of a cool connection.
Gotcha.
And then after about 3 years, I became a full-time faculty member there. And it was in the early days of personal computers. So kind of got in on the ground floor of, we taught on IBM DisplayWrite computers that had 8-inch discs that we had to put in.
Yep, remember, yep.
And ended up becoming the academic director there for the last couple of years, and then moved back to Nebraska and started actually here at Metro. It was then called Business and Industry, which is now our workforce development
Gotcha.
area, and did a lot of corporate training for Metro as well as NBDC through UNO, and started teaching part-time adjunct here at Metro in the credit side, and then went full-time in 1997 on the credit side in the info department. And then I also went back and got my master's in the early 2000s, and it's a master's in education.
Okay, thank you, thank
Yeah.
you. Tidbit I want to share with our audience. So you were one of my favorite instructors as I came through Metro. So, yep.
One of my grads right
Yep.
there, so yeah.
Thanks, Laurie. So tell us, so you can tell myself and the audience, obviously I know, but for our audience and listeners, share a little bit about the program as it exists today, what the pathway is that you specifically support in some of the classes, if you don't mind.
Okay. I support the web development pathway, and mainly I teach classes that are primarily in the web development career certificate, which is the level 1 certificate. And then there are 2 certificates, level 2 certificates in that pathway. The database, and then is it the IT generalist is in that pathway. Do you want me to go into the classes
please,
included?
if you could, yeah.
In the level 1, the web development career certificate, there's a file management class, and really trying to give students a good overview of different operating systems, a little bit of exposure to a command line, as well as just really understanding file and folder structure and paths and organization, which is key to web, to creating paths and things in your code. And then that's one class, and then the 1311, which is the web development or web page creation 1, is our strong HTML, CSS base class, and that's really the prereq for a lot of the other web classes. And then there's web page creation 2, which is Info 2311, and that really builds on the HTML, CSS, but adds Bootstrap, media optimization for the web, as well as really getting deeper into Flexbox layout and grid layout. A little bit of SAS, compiled CSS, so a little bit of that in that class. And then the Info 1315, which is interface design. Mainly UX, UI design is what's covered in that, and testing, really design principles are also covered in that class. What's the other one? Internet scripting.
Okay.
And that is, I believe, right, I don't personally teach that class, but right now it's mainly a JavaScript class, but also look at libraries of scripting. And mainly not like teaching a language JavaScript from scratch, but how to incorporate what you would do with it, what are some common uses, and then looking at a lot of pre-written code, but also then able to customize.
Gotcha. Is it, and did you mention WordPress, I think? Or?
Oh, WordPress,
Yeah.
that's the last
Yep.
one. Yeah.
Yep.
Info 1322
Right.
is a basic WordPress class, and that WordPress is the leading content management system that's being used for web design. And that class actually goes, far enough into it to where we're not creating like plugins or themes in that class, but we are looking at how we can get into the code and customize.
Gotcha.
So it really kind of takes you from the beginning of what is WordPress, how do you create a basic WordPress site, and it's a free open source software with a lot of free add-ons that you can add to a website. But we do get a little bit deeper into that, which is why the HTML, CSS is a prereq for that class, because we really need to know that coding if we want to customize what we're using.
Gotcha. So our students are getting a good wide variety of what we would classify as front end / UI, little bit of UX, I believe.
Yes.
Yep. Gotcha.
Definitely more, this is definitely, even though it's not called front end web development, it's definitely focuses this certificate on the front end.
Exactly. Yeah. And so kind of a leading question, for students that are listening or just viewers, if they're considering this pathway, from your experience, what are some of the pathways that career paths they might expect to pursue with this education they require?
I would say more of the front end web, also supporting, we've talked a little bit about, people just wanting to build their own website for their own business. So entrepreneurs that just need a jump start on how to do that. I think also anybody that's going to possibly go on to maybe explore back end or a little bit more with, the data analytics part of it, because behind a lot of your websites is, as we all know, is data collection on what you're clicking, how long you're spending. And so people that want to go on to that and understand data analytics really need to know kind of how to at least work with the front end or do the front end part themselves.
Right. And having, gone through the classes myself, I would, concur with you. I think I felt I came out of the program with a solid foundational knowledge of, HTML, CSS, a little bit of scripting, some server management, security, things that go along with establishing like content management systems. So hopefully that helps our audience with that. Laurie, with your experience in teaching, where would you say, let me ask you this, of the classes that you've taught and developed over the years, which ones are some of your favorite classes to teach and deliver?
I know this may not, it definitely is the HTML, CSS class, because it really is in day one in that class, we're building a web page and we're viewing it in the browser and we're clicking links that we've built. So it's a really quick class that gives some feedback back to the student on, wow, I can do this. And, and by the end of the class, they're creating a website for the final project and styling and, have all types of media embedded in the website. So I like that class just because it a lot of time is the first time that a student has done any coding, and it kind of takes the mystery and the fear out of it, as well as they get a product really quickly that they can see and test and use.
Gotcha. What would you say, again, for a prospective student listening, does everyone have to have an eye for design, or what is, that particular class, the HTML web page creation? I've seen, I'm sure you've seen students at varied levels with aesthetic design and those elements that complement that. Is that a prerequisite, or how would you address that?
For a student that really has interest in maybe the coding part of it, maybe even thinking, well, I may want to see what web design's about and go on to the back end, I don't think you have to have a strong feel for design to be successful, because there are a lot of coders that rely on other people to do that. So, it all depends on really what environment they get into down the road. If it's a a web development team, there's probably going to be a graphic designer that creates the look and the feel and the colors, puts it together, and then kind of they give you that
The
picture
requirements, yeah.
and say, okay, now you create the code that will generate that. That being said, though, having an eye for design,
It helps.
and in the classes that I mentioned, the interface design does go into that.
Right.
It's actually covered in every class, and
Right.
we're always trying to, not just throw something together, but throw something together that's aesthetically pleasing.
Pleasing, exactly.
When you get into WordPress, you realize that if you use a CMS system like WordPress and a theme that's already been created, the design is kind of done for you.
It is.
And you can really focus on the content and then maybe the extra functionality that you need by adding, those additional plugins for the site. So I don't think somebody that feels like I don't have the eye for design should say this isn't for me, because I think there are so many things out there and tools out there that help you with that, or environments that you can get into where maybe that's not your key focus. You're in charge of the front end coding, and somebody else will do the design.
No, I would agree. Just reflecting myself on having taught some of those classes and taking them and then looking at where the industry is going, I'm a strong proponent that is a foundational class anyone in web programming or front end or UI design definitely needs to have. And it just builds so many foundational skills that, whatever aspect of development work you're in, it's a critical course.
One other thing
yeah.
that's in that class that I forgot to mention, that I do get some questions from people like, do you teach a class on or SEO, search engine optimization? And I say, we don't have a specific class just on that, not that I'm aware of.
No, we don't.
I don't think
we
so.
don't. I have to think a minute too.
But that's incorporated in
Yes,
all of our classes.
it is.
And in that beginning, HTML, CSS, I mean, it's throughout the whole thing, and accessibility and, all of those other good practices going into to creating websites. But that definitely is something that people ask, because that's a huge, it's a science out there that.
It is a whole nother topic in itself. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say that, and would you concur? Like UX, as I understand it, those are really whole other sub concepts in the big picture of web development as I see it. Yeah. Which is kind of my next leading question. So where, with what you've seen and what I've seen over the years, and where our program is, do you have some foresight on where? Are we still where we need to be, or have you given thought? And I know we have regular advisory board meetings. Do you have any personal thoughts on how the program is evolving, or where it should evolve maybe in the coming months and years to come? Yeah.
It's so hard, because,
It
I
is.
mean, it really is a new area of IT when you think about it's only been around, almost 30 years, maybe,
yeah.
25 to 30, and it's changing, evolving all the time. I would say, I think we've had several discussions on this. The level 1 certificate that I'm mainly involved in is those skills that we cover there. I don't see those changing.
I would agree. Yeah.
But when you go beyond that, when you go to that second level, or when you get a little bit more into a niche, like, I really like, the back end, or I really like the developing for CMS, like I want to create my own plugins, then I really feel like that evolves quickly, but it also requires additional skills, and you kind of have to almost specialize then.
I would agree.
So I think our certificate, the level 1 certificate, is a great base. I think we're still on track as far as what we're covering. And where is it going to go? It's going in so many directions, and really CMS or other platform frameworks that are being used. People think, well, I don't need to know how to code then. Well, yeah, you do.
You do. Yeah, you do. From experience, I
Yeah.
can attest to that. Yeah, but I think, frankly, without the skills and knowledge I acquired as a student, and then just knowing how the industry is evolving, that I still hold fast to what you're saying, that foundational skills are never going to go away, and you can take those, even the skills you're using with a CMS tool, so much further if you have solid foundational skills to expand upon it. So I do concur with you, and I think just elaborating on that, I feel like we have set a good foundation. I feel like we do really well at what we do offer, and that we can't teach everything. We want to provide students solid foundational skills that they can build upon. And I think you and I have spoken, we can't chase every latest and greatest technology.
Right.
But, we do a fair job about balancing when there's new and emerging technologies coming to the table. So
I agree.
I would
I
agree.
agree.
So to that point, what do you do, Laurie, to kind of help yourself stay current with the industry, like what's coming and, when we have to consider, should we be introducing something in our curriculum? What do you do to kind of keep yourself current?
Read books, look at tutorials out online. Now I just went blank on what is that we have here at the college that's available to
Udemy, yeah.
Udemy. Just wrote that web page creation 2 class. I wrote a couple. It's probably been now a year and a half to 2 years ago, and a lot of what was in there was somewhat new to me. So I was out taking
Right.
online classes on Bootstrap and playing and tweaking and reading all I could. I do try to. I have a couple friends that I've maintained and built their websites over the years. So I do try to keep my hand out there in
You have to,
actually doing it, trying to apply.
Right.
Because that is one thing, when you've taught for so long,
Yeah,
you're not in the industry,
Right.
but at least web development is a pretty easy place to be that you can actually still
Right.
practice a
Yeah.
little bit more of what you're teaching. I used to teach, and we don't offer it anymore, but that capstone class.
Yes. Let's can we share with the audience? I love that class and what it does for our students. So if you can share that
Yeah.
experience, and we'll talk offline. I feel I've been thinking ironically about it. Is that something we maybe need to reconsider introducing? But if you could share, please.
Yeah, it was a required class. It was the web development capstone class that was required as part of a degree, an associate's degree that didn't have the pathways. So once the college went to the pathways and we kind of reorganized our degrees, that class isn't required any longer. But I just taught it this past summer for somebody who was finishing up. And in that class, we actually went out in the community and found people that needed a website, either a new website or now redesigned, possibly something that was done and wasn't meeting their needs. And our students would go through that entire process.
Right.
So it was a great learning. It was kind of like an internship, but
was,
not,
Yeah.
they're not flailing out on their
No,
own
that's
or
true,
having to
yeah.
go find it. I mean, we if I had somebody, I arranged most of the clients, but if they had somebody that they
Right.
had already approached them and needed a website, we would work with that. So great portfolio builder.
Right. Yeah. I think just what I've seen from a distance, invaluable skills, like you mentioned, students are getting to do requirements gathering, interface with a client, help with the hosting piece that, is maybe underconsidered or undervalued. So the whole 9 yards. I just ironically was reflecting on that and just had some conversations in the community that I'll share with you later.
Right.
But that's, I think for students listening, frankly, I feel like you were one of the faculty that did an excellent job of structuring how that class was set up. And we've had other variations of it, but I'm biased. I'm from the web pathway too, so I'm going to say that. But
and it felt like such a easy, clean connection
Right,
to really supporting the community at the same time.
Right.
It also, a lot of my students were then, we did that all for free.
Right.
And obviously, if there was a money involved in the hosting,
Right.
the client would
right.
pay for that, but they didn't pay our students to develop the website. But some students were kept on by that
Right.
client, and then it became a paying
It
gig.
does,
So it was really, I loved that experience for both reasons.
No,
Great for the
I would agree.
student, but also great for the community to
Right, yeah,
be able to support that.
Right. I would agree. I've been, I'm always brainstorming how can we reincorporate that and, even really the full life cycle where, implementation to production after the development piece of it. And so, and further, how can we solicit, a broader section of community members to provide that service? Because and I know we get calls all the time, both of us, for student or
Right.
community members looking for people to develop free or low, no cost. But it's a business model. We can talk about that at a
And
later
it's always, I think we're always in that mind frame of, well, now with these smaller certificates,
Yes.
we only have,
Yes.
this much time, and
that's the struggle.
and you kind of
It
take
is.
them out of learning skills
We do.
to apply.
Invaluable.
Yeah,
And that
it's hard
applied
to-
piece is really, retrospectively, I'm
Yeah.
thinking, we need to maybe rethink that again too. So,
Yeah.
good points. So, Laura, you asked me some questions. I feel like I'm putting you on the hot seat. Any questions about the program as a whole, or where we are going, where I think we should go? Table's yours.
I guess maybe I'll throw a question back to you.
Yes.
Do you feel like with maybe even not necessarily that basis, that level one certificate that I'm more involved in, but where do you see the industry, the web development going as far as are we covering what we need to cover? Maybe even the second level certificates or?
No, I agree. We've spoken offline. I hold fast to the fact that foundational skills, so, HTML, CSS, some basic JavaScript, what I understand, modern front end or UI development is. I think we're on the right path. I think it's just finding the right mix of, we really need to let data drive our decisions, and I'm focusing not emotions and data. So I would, we'll challenge ourselves both to continue to look at, what are industry partners telling us. And, I would say my initial gut feeling would be, I like where you're going with the UI. If I were to make a non-data driven gut decision today, it would be, let's look more at some of the UI components to complement more. I think your previous statement too is we kind of have to make decisions. We can't do or chase or offer everything, and not let our emotions drive what we're doing, because we need to make data-driven decisions when it comes to curriculum. And so I'm challenging myself not to make a gut decision and say, well, chase the next shiny thing that's coming. So good question for me, because it puts me on the spot too. Again, we've had various dialogue on this, and I don't know if I'm giving you a good answer. I'm giving you a reserved answer.
Reserved.
So that's a good question.
Those are always good too.
Yeah. So I think we'll continue to, we'll talk to our partners, and you and I will talk, and the team will talk about what do we do. I don't necessarily think anything's broken. I think you do really well at what you do and what the other faculty do with those foundational courses. I think it's just finding the right mix if there needs to be additional content added.
Right.
So I would go as far as to say it's not broken, but we always have opportunities to listen to partners to see if there's more we could add, is my short long answer. So.
And thinking of a question I get every once in a while, especially I teach the Info 1002 class that is geared towards a certification.
Yes.
I've had some students ask me, like, is there a certification or is a certification needed? Obviously in security,
Yes.
they're a lot more important and valued when you go out to look at a job. And I know we've talked about this, but I still, in the research that I've done, certification isn't as important in the web development.
I would concur,
especially in the front end part of it, but a portfolio is.
I would agree.
So you really, in one of the classes, in the WordPress class, we actually build a portfolio, and it's on a different server that doesn't get deleted each quarter. So and our agreement is we'll keep their sites there for 3 years.
Right, okay.
So that they can keep building a portfolio and adding to it. And then hopefully, when they're done, they can use that as a tool for employment. But I don't, if students are thinking, because certification, I don't think in this,
and
at least in the front end, is not as.
I would agree. You're right. We've spoken a couple of times. I think we've looked at a couple of options, and we haven't really moved. So I think we're on the same page that the tangible applied learning is more valuable. A portfolio is going to serve better for a prospective student. So I would agree. My position hasn't changed on that either. Unless something new has come to light with you, I would agree that we're on the right track with that as well. Let's see. All right, Laurie, let's go back to, you mentioned WordPress earlier. Can you share with us, for listeners that might be wondering, if I'm a new student to this field and they're not familiar with content management systems, can you maybe elaborate more as to why one might choose building a new website using WordPress or some other content manager compared to just doing a standard markup document with HTML and CSS? What are the pros and cons?
WordPress, as I said, was a CMS. It's a content management system, and how it's structured is there's a database, and then there's a theme and templates that create the HTML pages, and then there's PHP used, which is a programming language, to pull the data from the database, throw it into the HTML. The HTML still structures the pages that are viewed, and the CSS is still styling, how it looks and what you can do with it. So the HTML CSS class, we are in a text editor,
Right.
hard coding our pages, doing it the hard way.
Right.
They're not allowed to use any tools
Right.
that generate code for them. But when they get into WordPress, the CMS, I mean, it is built for people that don't know code.
Right.
Because it really gives the person an interface that they can just go in and really focus on content and not have to deal as much with, the coding and the structure. That being said, though, it's a fairly complex system, and it does handle a lot of things that you kind of take for granted on a website. Like when you fill out a form and you hit send, where does it go?
Right.
What does it do? Where does that data go? Where's it saved?
Right.
Well, there are plugins, little applications that you can add to WordPress that will handle things like that.
Right.
Even a shopping cart. There's a whole, WooCommerce or e-commerce plugins that handle shopping carts. So it really takes your basic knowledge of HTML and CSS, and then when you get into a CMS and you think, well, why did I learn that? Why did I spend the time doing that? Well, you can create a website using the pre-designed themes and the templates, but if you want to customize it or you want to do something that isn't available within the menu system, but the code, you can get to the code and you can make changes, you can customize, you can, change colors that may not be, one of the websites that I maintain for a friend, we found a theme that did everything we wanted, but he needed the color scheme to match the colors that were already in his branded, logos and business cards. So that required a lot of custom CSS to really, because that exact green
has to be there. Yep.
wasn't in their choices of colors. So, if you didn't know CSS or you didn't know HTML, you wouldn't know even how to identify what elements I'm trying to target with these different colors. So
that's a great example. Yeah, I think that what you just said is simply taking, kind of our previous points, foundational skills, customizing, and I had the same epiphany as probably a lot of your students. Wow, when you learn the original, what I would say old school way, and you get introduced to like content management tools, it's like night and day, and you wonder, but when you have the epiphany, wow, I can really take these skills so much further with those foundational skills, which goes back to our original point that I don't think they're ever going to get broken as far as, the relevance of HTML and CSS. And again, I think you do a really great job of introducing those and stressing in your classes that I've been in and observed. Just kudos to you on that. I just want to share that too.
The other part of, I think, WordPress at the end is even if it takes some work and understanding the code to customize and get a website exactly how that client wants, the cool thing and why a lot of people use WordPress or a CMS like Drupal or Joomla to do that is so that the client who doesn't have the coding could actually maintain the content pretty easily. I mean, they can log in, they're using a menu system, not having to go into code. And if they just want to go into a page and edit a paragraph or change the dates on something or change the prices on something, it's very easy for somebody that's non-technical to go in and maintain a site. So when we went out, was that, I don't even know how many years ago now. Totally, time flies.
I know, yes.
Probably 7 or 8 years ago when you and I went out to several, like 3 different web development businesses, and we showed them the curriculum and like, do you see any gaps? And they all said, you're not covering a CMS.
Yes.
And we're like,
I know. And they were relatively new at that time, I think, So.
And they're like, almost all of our sites, if we have a new client, almost all of our clients were building using a CMS
tool. Right.
Mainly for that reason, so that the client could have some, maintenance.
Yep. To that point, you kind of touched on it. I'm curious to hear with your students. Have you heard requests from students in your classes like, are we going to teach other CMSs, or have you gotten any of that feedback as of recent? I'm just curious to know.
I have not, and I've gone in and worked in Drupal a little bit. I haven't done and Joomla a little bit, but it's been a few years probably since I've looked at that. But It's kind of like when they tell you, oh, if you learn one programming
would agree.
language,
It
you can
is.
pick up another one a little
Right.
bit easier. And I feel that's pretty similar
Yeah.
with the CMS
That was
system.
that was going to be my follow-up comment. I would agree.
Yeah.
My experience too. If you work with one, the fundamentals are pretty much the same, and
Yeah.
so I would concur with you. Let's see, Laurie. My last final question for you: with your years of teaching, can you recall a student or experience that really has stood out with you? A student that's going on to have success in the field, or that just left a lasting impression with you throughout your educational profession?
Well, I'm old, so I have a lot of those students.
Gotcha.
Probably in the recent years, I had a student who had some, I think her background was in marketing and a little bit of graphic design. And she was, kind of went through schooling before the web and
Right.
internet was going on, and really needed to just get web design
Right.
down, and came back, and she now has her own company, does graphic design. I've referred her to several
Gotcha.
friends and family that needed work done, and just really, she really appreciated it, but also knew the the need to continue learning.
Right,
I mean, you just can't
to,
be
yeah.
stagnant
can't.
and web, absolutely you can't.
Yeah.
Because it is always,
It
we're
is.
always chasing
Yeah,
what is
we
the next
are.
newest
Yeah.
thing, and we need to get ready to teach it. But just somebody that has the drive, that understands it's lifelong learning,
It is.
that is excited about
Right.
always learning, but then also really took it and ran,
Right.
and has their own company. And
No, that's a
Yeah.
great testimonial. And
Yeah.
I think, you not only for web, but any area of IT, I think that theme holds true that, those lifelong learners, people that love what they're doing. And I can, reflect on some students that have
Yeah.
had that. And you see that the hunger, the fire, the passion in those students that they're going to be successful. You just put them in the right place and the right opportunity, and they'll thrive.
Yeah.
So it's always, to me, rewarding when we see those students go on to have successes.
and will take it upon themselves if they don't
Yes.
know something,
They will learn.
and they're sharing tutorials with me.
They will,
Like, hey, I
yes.
found this.
Yes.
This is really a great thing.
Yeah.
To really understand
You
that
do,
you
yeah.
kind of have to keep
Right.
yourself going.
No, I agree. And would you agree, like when you see those students in class, they kind of stand out in the beginning, you kind of know these are the ones that are going to go on and have great
Yeah.
successes. I would agree.
It's usually the ones like when at the beginning of a class when you're saying, you have to create something that matches this, and I'm
Yes.
going to tell you exactly what
And they go,
I want you to do, and then they're adding this here, and I'm
Yes.
like, there's going to be a
Yes.
time for that, but
Yes.
initially I need to know that
Yes.
what I'm asking
the
you
fundamentals,
to
right?
do.
Yeah.
But that's awesome, and I kind of feel
Yes.
guilty holding them back,
Yeah.
But it's
They will shine.
very rewarding.
No, I would agree.
Yeah.
Well, Laurie, thank you for spending time with us today. I'm glad that you could share your experiences and a little bit about your program with our listeners. We will have you back again. We will talk more. We're kind of doing rounds, as you know, with
Okay.
all of our faculty to get our programs out there and showcase. So thank you for taking time with
All
us
right,
today.
my pleasure.
Thank you. We'll talk to you soon.
All right,
Bye-bye.
bye.
That was better? Okay. All right.